Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Triple P, Tripple dot P, aka Pimp, Prophet, and Priest. And as usual, we're gonna have a very, very powerful video for you guys today, a self-reaction video. And I cannot stress the importance of this video. Today's topic will be why doesn't God stop suffering? The truth no one tells us. And I know throughout history we have always been concerned with that topic. It's been a big philosophical debate throughout the ages. Why does God allow suffering? And is there so much atrocities that happen throughout the world? Some individuals are born sick, some individuals are born blind, handicapped, cannot walk, cannot talk, and the list goes on and on and on. And so, again, that is why some individuals would even say there can't be a God to allow such suffering. But today, what I'm going to talk about is an esoteric subject matter from a non dualistic perspective. So, if you're interested in understanding how other cultures may view the concept of God allowing suffering, this video is for you. So, without further ado, I just would like to make a very, very brief announcement. So, a brief announcement before I begin. Again, very, very powerful subject matter today, and I cannot thank you guys enough for joining the stream. Your patience, attention is very much valued and appreciated on this channel. And again, like I said, as usual, we dive into deep philosophical ideas that is non-traditional. So anyhow, let me move right along. So again, you can find me on these platforms here, uh, social media platforms, and the goal is, as it stands, to go live every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 p.m. And however, we are only going live on three of these platforms right now, but we are going to upgrade some stuff and we're going to be able to go live on all of these platforms simultaneously in a period of time. So that's going to take some time, but that will happen shortly. And so, as well, the content that will be displayed or the content subject matters that we do talk about on this subject, on this channel, usually is adult content, information that is pretty much for adults, relationships, sex, marriage, affairs, things of that sort. That is what you can expect from this channel. So this channel is going to be, like I said, very deep, deep philosophical ideas. So if you are a person that's interested in learning, if you're a person that wants to broaden your horizon, your perspective, maybe you may be wondering some things. This is the channel for you. Very deep subject matters again, but this channel is not for entertainment purposes. There might be some entertainment at times through those may be watching, but however, the subject matters are very, very, very deep and complex. So today's video, without further ado, this video, I cannot stress the importance that you guys stick around until the very end because it's going to give you guys a totally different perspective on why doesn't God stop suffering. Because I'm going to go into different cultural beliefs. Why doesn't God stop suffering? Why does God allow all of these atrocities to happen? People being born with all of these deformities, and the list goes on. Innocent people dying, innocent people getting killed, and on and on and on, all throughout the world. This question is being a great philosophical debate. So I'm going to go into this subject matter, going into it from an Eastern perspective. You guys are going to have a much, much better understanding of what the East has to say about it, not your traditional Abrahamic faith, uh, you know, Abrahamic faith, the traditional pastors and preachers and ministers. They may have some perspective, their perspective, but from an Eastern perspective, totally, totally different. So, without further ado, I thank you guys for sticking around, being patient that long, and we're just going to start the video right now. Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Triple P, TRIPPLE.P, and I am your astrology pimp, your astrology prophet, and your astrology priest. And today's 7 Seers Astrology Prophetics video topic will be, why does God allow suffering? However, before I continue this video, for clarification purposes only, I know many of you guys have seen me create videos and I've used references from the Buddhists, the Hindus, and even at times I will use uh, biblical references in reference to Joshua Christos, Jesus, and things of that sort. From I tend to use many different sources when it comes down to delivering information because during my spiritual journey, I have accumulated knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from many, many different spiritual beliefs and spiritual practices as well. However, I am clarifying this because when I use the word God, I know that that is a very, very controversial and very delicate word. And so I do not want anyone to believe that I'm speaking about a particular deity in I'm not speaking of any particular deity. I'm not speaking from, I'm not speaking basically from a Buddhist perspective. However, I do use uh, many Buddhist concepts, such the non-duality concepts, things of that sort. But I'm not promoting Buddha. I'm not promoting Allah. I'm not promoting Yahweh. I'm not promoting Yesus. I'm not promoting His Majesty. All of my videos are promoting you. This is who I am talking about. However, I use these different spiritual teachings and principles to get my point across. However, I am not here to convince you to join or become a part of any particular spiritual belief or spiritual or religious practice. I am therefore, again, only utilizing all of the knowledge that I have and just to get my point across. However, I would say that I would be considered more of an existentialist. And an existentialist is where I usually, the angle I try to come from, I'm not being biased towards any particular religion, any particular belief, any particular God, if that may make any sense. So again, coming from an existentialist perspective, and holistic perspective, I don't have a particular deity or a God that I'm trying to ascribe my viewers to uh, follow per se. So with that being said, using the word God, I'm not referring to a particular God. However, again, because the East and the West is, have different concepts of God. Again, I'm not promoting Buddha, Allah, Shiva, Yahweh, uh, Jehovah, Jesus, His Majesty. I am not promoting any of these uh, spiritual deities, if I may say. I am just delivering information that is going to be more beneficial to individuals with more of an open mind. Because I believe the more information we have, the more knowledge, wisdom, and understanding we have, we will be able to make better decisions. Uh, because there was a scripture, I think it was Jesus, he did say, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. And that is what I'm talking about today, delivering more knowledge. So very briefly, like I said earlier, I am not promoting any particular religion. I am not picking on any particular belief. I am pretty much here to entertain, not sorry, to educate because of my long spiritual journey, practicing, studying all different sorts of. I've looked at just about every religion, practice, spiritual teaching. That is what that is my job to have some idea so I could deliver that information back. However, I know because of doing this for such a long time, I know when we use the word God, there tends to be people are very sensitive about what they believe, and so sometimes subject matters like this, like sometimes tiptoe. I try my very best to not say the wrong thing because I don't want to offend anybody, because it's a very delicate situation when I'm talking about someone's belief. And so therefore the majority, 99.9% of my videos are deep spiritual subject matters. I do go into relationships, sex, and affairs. This is a holistic. I talk holistically. However, the subjects that I do talk about, they are usually very, very serious subject matters, and usually my viewers have to have a very open mind. You will find out, as whoever may be watching this at wherever they may be, you will notice there's a pattern. None of my videos are pretty much frivolous, uh, brain rot, garbage entertaining. The information. You will have to think about what I'm saying. You will have to question yourself. You will have to question your beliefs. So the majority of the information, I haven't say majority, all of the information is about learning, growing, and life transformation. So this is another subject matter. Like I said, most individuals may be so caught up in their belief systems, they may not be so willing to look at other individuals' perspective, especially when we're talking about God. And this is one of those subject matters. So I truly, I cannot express the fact how much I appreciate you guys for sticking around and watching this far, who are in the stream, because you're gonna, at the end of this, or not even at the end, in the middle, but as soon as I get going, you guys are gonna learn something completely different about why God allows suffering, because the perspective that I'm gonna take is going to be completely different than what you will hear in your traditional Abrahamic faith. So, with that being said, hopefully that clears up what I'm trying to say. So, suffering, again, is at the root cause of all belief systems trying to reduce suffering. No matter what religion, no matter what spiritual practice, we all are trying to obtain some type of freedom from suffering and obtain happiness. That is usually the ultimate goal, and that is mainly the main reasons why many of us may follow a particular religious or spiritual belief or practices, because we believe that these beliefs and these practices will eliminate suffering and bring some sort of peace, some sort of joy into our lives. So again, however, like I said, I do come from an existentialist perspective. A non-duality perspective is usually where I am coming from. So with that being said, again, back to the topic, why does God allow suffering? And I would say that this video is more so for educational purposes only, because this subject matter has been debated for centuries, decades, and eons. From the beginning of time, man have always asked the question, why does God allow suffering? Why is there suffering in the world? Why is there evil in the world? This question is not a new question. This question has been asked, debated for eons. From the beginning of time, man have always wondered why God has allowed suffering. However, in this video, I am going to somewhat speak of an Abrahamic God, because again, the Eastern belief systems such as Buddhism, Hinduism, and, uh, and Sikhism, they have usually a different concept of God, a more non-dualistic perspective of God. So again, I am going to speak more so from an Abrahamic God perspective. So again, but I'm not picking on any particular God, because like I said, I am an existentialist. I don't like to label myself as anything, but just to make myself clear, I am not picking on any particular God. I am not promoting any particular deity. I am just here to deliver information the best way that I can by utilizing all of the information that I've accumulated throughout the years from different religious practices and spiritual beliefs as well. So again, if you see me speak of the Buddhists, the Hindus, or the Bible, do not necessarily say that I am
coming from that angle, that's the information that I feel would be most suitable for whatever topic that I'm trying to portray at this time. But anyhow, with that being said, from an Abraham perspective, this question is being asked for millennium. Why is there suffering in the world? Why does God allow suffering? Why does a God who is all loving, all knowing, and all powerful allow these atrocities in the world? And this video, again, because coming from an existentialist perspective, I am going to more so give some of you guys a different perspective, something new to think about, because I know most individuals who just basically know of an Abrahamic God, they tend to not necessarily know any other belief systems. They don't know that much about any other system, so they tend to just know one thing and one thing alone. So, however, today I will hopefully educate many of you guys and give you guys a different perspective on God as well. So, with that being said, why would a loving, all knowing, all powerful being, entity, deity allow the atrocities in the world? Why would this being, this thing, this God, this all knowing, all powerful allow children to die, bombs, wars, famine, disease, and things of that sort? And so this again topic is being debated for some time, and many would say, if you ask, some religious or spiritual leaders, they would say that one main reason is God is testing us. They would say God is testing our faith, and nothing happens, everything happens for a reason, and God is testing our faith. That sounds that sounds, good per se. However, when we look at it on a deeper perspective, we see there are children dying, there's children being born with such of deformities and things of that sort. And so that question, that answer per se, again, it sounds good, you know, theoretically per se, but when you really look at it again, why does, if God is testing us, what does the young child who was born deformed or born with some type of disability or some type of uh, disease per se, and this child didn't do anything, what is the purpose of that child being tested? Yes, then you might say maybe the parents are being tested, but then now the child is being used as a scapegoat per se. Why would God allow a child to suffer born, deformed, cancer, and all of these other diseases just to test, just to strengthen the faith of a parent? That's basically the sort of child is a scapegoat. So that doesn't really sound too acceptable. Again, from an Abrahamic perspective, we tend to just accept it as that. It sounds okay, so we live with it, but deep down inside, we know it doesn't really sound too well. And then sometimes they may say, yeah, well, God is strengthening us. Yes, and yes, through atrocities and through different situations, yes, we do get strengthened. But again, back to the innocent and the child that is being born, what does it benefit the child per se to be born with a disability where it cannot walk, it cannot talk, it has tubes in its lungs, and the list goes on. It cannot even breathe with tubes, some machinery type thing. So again, this does not necessarily, doesn't stand up to scrutiny as well. Then you may say, well, free will. Yes, free will, that sounds a little okay. That sounds a lot better. Free will, that is the reason. Yes, we do have free will. And yes, we do make up our decisions based on having the free will to do whatever we want to do. However, again, this too, again, does not give us a good answer for why the young child who was just born again, this individual doesn't even have free will, because they don't even know anything that happens. They didn't do anything for anything for them to have any free will. They was just born deformed or having problems or whatever the case may be. So again, that too.
So just very briefly before I go too far into it, so I basically what I did was I gave three examples of what you would hear from your traditional Abrahamic faith, uh, our leaders, our spiritual leaders. If you go and you seek some type of counsel, if I may say, from our Abrahamic spiritual leaders, and you ask them, why do God allow suffering? Why doesn't God stop the suffering? And then in many cases, you will hear your Abrahamic faith, pastor, priest, or some of that sort, they would say God is testing us. And so again, like I said also earlier, like I said, I don't necessarily, I am not coming from any particular religious belief background. I'm not here to pick on any particular belief. I am here simply just to educate. If individuals are interested in expanding their mind, looking, stepping outside of the box, and not being so narrow minded or dogmatic about their beliefs, then this channel or this information will be for you. But if you are not someone who is open minded, willing to expand the mind, willing to look into things a lot deeper, then I highly suggest you leave now. So, like I was saying, so when you ask a traditional someone from an Abrahamic faith, why does God allow the suffering? They would say that the suffering is a test. God is testing us, and so He allows the suffering so we can be tested. Again, it sounds okay on paper. Theoretically, it sounds okay. Yes, God is testing us. That sounds okay. However, it still doesn't stand up to scrutiny when you look at it on a deeper perspective because you have an innocent kid that is born, like I said, with tubes in their lungs and their throat and heart deformities and things of that sort. Who was being tested? The parents, the child. The child was just born that way. The child didn't have any say in the matter, and that is why you see individuals in the East would say maybe it has something to do with karma, some type of previous life. We bring karma into this life. Again, these subject matters that I'm talking about are very controversial. So again, I'm not expecting individuals to just, you know, be accept what I'm saying as gospel because I'm just trying to again broaden the mind. So that is why again the Eastern philosophy is they would say that the child maybe brought some karma into the world or something of the sort, and then again the traditional religious beliefs would say that they are the parents or someone is being tested, but that doesn't really make much sense either because now innocent child is coming into the world that's suffering just so the parents could be tested and learn something. That sounds kind of little, well, I don't know. That don't sound too correct, you know. So, and then also, then another answer that you would hear is that the challenge the challenge that we are facing has something to do with strengthening us as well. That too sounds good. Also, theoretically, that sounds okay as well. Yes, that sounds yes because we know that trials and tribulations do strengthen us, and we do become stronger when we have obstacles. But again, what does the child have to do? Why does the child have to suffer to strengthen the parent. That's we're still looking at an innocent child suffering. So, and what did the child do to be needs to be strengthened? The child came into the world without any blemish or any type of bad credit, if I may say, and so that answer in itself to strengthen someone, that answer doesn't sound too good when we really analyze it and we put that answer under a microscope. We will see that uh, the child suffers just to strengthen the parents. That doesn't sound too good. The child comes in the world sick, uh, disabled, just to test the parent. That don't sound too good as well. And then this answer as well goes into another subject. They will say the suffering comes into the world because of free will. So we're going to look at it and see what from the free will perspective and see how well that stands up. And as time goes on, I will go into more so again from an Eastern perspective. What does the Eastern spiritual belief systems have to say about why does God allow suffering?
To answer again. So every answer, basically, there's many, 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 many answers. But if we really look back at it, if we look deeper into it, we will see that when it comes down to innocent newborn babies and so forth, they don't need to be challenged. They don't need to practice their faith. They don't need to strengthen their belief system. They don't need to do anything. They were innocent I'm just using innocent children as an example. You know, when there's a war, there's bombings and different things. Innocent, be it children, boys, young girls, men, elderly, all of these individuals are injured. All of these individuals are killed. And so, I mean, it sounds okay per se to say God is testing us per se, but why allow the innocent, some of the people to suffer that does not necessarily deserve to suffer, especially again the newborn and the children that was actually didn't have any choice in the matter to say that they even wanted to be here. So again, when we look at these answers that we have given throughout the ages, we will also see that these answers are not so credible per se, or they are not stable, if I may say. So today, what I'm going to do is we're going to look at some of the a different concept from a different perspective. And I know most individuals may not be too familiar with non-duality. They may not be familiar with the more perspectives from the Eastern religions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, things of that sort. We tend to not really be too familiar with those concepts coming from the East. However, that is the angle that I'm going to come from today, a totally different angle. And I hopefully this angle that I'm going to come from is going to give many individuals a different perspective, a whole different perspective on what they believe, the reason why God would allow suffering. And again, from an Advaita Vedanta perspective, one of the root cause, I would not say one of the root cause is not knowing thyself.
So, like I said, all of my previous videos had something to do with knowing thyself, knowing who you are, what you are at the core. I'm not talking about knowing who you are, from a title perspective. I am a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer, a carpenter, a barber, a beautician, a nurse. I'm not talking about any of those objective identities. I'm talking about knowing who you are at the core, self evaluation, self reflection, through deep introspection, meditation, things of that sort. That is the only way you can come to know who you are. And like I said earlier, all of the answers that we would get in reference to why God would allow suffering doesn't really make any sense from the Western perspective. When we give Western answers, trying to answer such deep philosophical ideas such as God is testing us and testing our faith and free will, and all of these answers really don't really make any sense, really. And like I said, innocent children being having born in the worst conditions, starving, suffering, and the list goes on and on and on, all throughout the world. I am not, and by any means, I am not political at all. I don't have any political affiliation with any particular group or anything of that sort. But something came across my mind because we're talking about kids, and again, I'm not by no means. I am again. I do not. Politics is not my thing. I'm not into politics. I'm not advocating any particular group. But however, the subject matter is why does God allow suffering? And like I said earlier, some places there are bombs going off and kids, innocent people, adults, elderly people, all type of people are dying in these wars and different things. What did they do to deserve to be blown up? What did they do to deserve being killed? They did absolutely nothing. But however, God still allows it. Why does God allow such atrocities when innocent people does not even have anything to do with it? We have a war. It's 2026 on April the 13th right now, and we have multiple wars going on all across the world, multiple bombs and missiles flying all over the sky. And just recently we had some a school. There was a school bombing where some innocent kids were blown up. I think it was a girls' school. I don't want to get into I'm not a politician. I'm not into politics. But this was that necessarily that God testing us? Was that a part of faith to strengthening us for actual school, a girls' school, to be blown up and hundreds of kids or 100 something kids died. Innocent young girls went to school trying to learn some education. Was that necessary? Was that something that God allowed? I hope you guys are starting to see what I'm saying here, because Why does God allow these things to happen? What did those girls do to deserve that? They didn't do anything. They went to school thinking that they were going to learn ABCs or whatever, and then they got blown to pieces. Why did God allow such atrocity? Again, all of the answers that you would hear from the Western world would be somewhat shortcomings. That is why I'm trying to again bring different perspectives to our viewers, so you guys could maybe look at it from a different perspective. That is what I do, and that is what I teach. I don't come with pretty much traditional information. So we're going to look at this answer again from a Eastern perspective. What Why does God allow these things? Because it doesn't make any sense for innocent children to just, innocent people in general, whether they be kids or adults or innocent people to die in wars and stray bullets and all of these stray accidents. Someone accidentally knocked somebody down, hit and run, and the person died, and it's just a lot going on. So none of the answers, to me at least, makes any sense until you look at it from a different perspective.
Being separated from money causes suffering. The feeling, I should say, the feeling of separation is the root cause of suffering. Feeling separated from not having enough money would cause suffering. Feeling separated from not having enough friends, you would suffer. Feeling not separated from not having enough, having love, you will feel suffering. Suffering is the root cause. Sorry, separation is the root cause of all suffering, because when the opposite of suffering is happiness, and when everything is going great in our lives, when we have money, when we have things of that sort, when we have things going well, our bills are paid, we have food in the fridge and food in the cupboard, and extra fundings to do whatever we do, the opposite of suffering is happiness. So when things are going great, we tend to not complain. We tend to not ask, why is this happening? Why am I making so much money? Why did I get a raise? Why did I find this attractive young man or this young lady, or whatever age it may be? We tend to not question anything when things are going well. However, when things are not going so well, we tend to look at stuff. We look at things from a suffering perspective. So again, what I'm going to do here today is going to give you guys a different perspective on suffering from an Advaita Vedanta, from a non-duality perspective, and that is what I'm going to introduce to some of you guys today. And this, from that perspective, you will have a different understanding of why God would allow suffering. So, from an Advaita Vedanta perspective, a non-duality perspective.
So, like I said earlier as well, something very very interesting. I said that when things are going great, when things are going fine, we tend to not have any issues. I think I maybe pressed the wrong thing. I don't know if I did. Something happened on my screen that's not the way it was before. I don't know what happened. But anyhow, like I said, when we are happy and things are going well, we tend to not worry about anything. Things are going great. We don't care about anything for that matter of fact. And so, we have no reason to even, look to God for any help or anything, because we tend to not. Uh, we tend to not. I'm trying to get the screen to come back to where it was. Something kind of went off track. I'm not quite sure what happened. I double clicked something and then something else happened. But anyhow, back to what I was saying. So according to the Buddhists, according to the Hindu, they would say that the root cause of suffering is not knowing thyself, and that not knowing thyself is also connected to uh, being separate, separation, having a dualistic perspective on reality, seeing the self as being different. I am different than you. You are different than me. I am separate from you. You are separate from me. And because of this duality perspective that we tend to have, that is one of the root causes that would allow us to treat each other with such atrocity and treat each other so harsh and kill and do all of the things that we do to each other, because we tend to see each other as being separate. what I do to you does not affect me. So it is okay for me to steal from you. It is okay for me to harm you. It is okay for me to end your life because you are you and I am me. That is the root cause of suffering, separation, and that separation comes from not knowing who you are. So we suffer when we feel separate from things. We suffer when we feel separate from money. When we feel like we have no money, we suffer because we see ourselves as being separate than the money, not understanding that we are actually the money itself. We are a part of everything that exists. When we want love and we feel like we suffer, we want someone to come into our life and to our life, and so we suffer that way as well because we feel like the person that we want is not present, so we feel separate from the person that we want, and so we suffer. So separation is the root cause of suffering. I'm not quite sure what happened to my screen, but
God
something,
is not really seen the
if I could
same
figure
way
out
as the Western God per se.
something kind of went wrong here. I don't know what happened to the screen. I really don't know. Something went wrong. I think I double clicked something and
You know, and
I double clicked something and then this thing happened. I don't know. I don't know what happened here. I don't know why. Something. I'm trying to get the screen back to its original size, but something doesn't. It looks like it went out of sync for some reason. I don't remember it being. I did some click. I clicked something, and then something happened, and the screen went out of sync. But anyhow, either way, I'm gonna just.
I'm just using the word God loosely because many of these Eastern philosophies do not necessarily utilize the word God as we may do in the West. So again, the West looks at the term God completely different as that from an Eastern perspective. There's two different things. That is why I'm saying again, I am trying to introduce you guys to a whole completely different perspective on this thing we call God. Again, again, like I was saying, I'm going to give you guys a different perspective, a totally different perspective on how we view God from an non-duality perspective, from an Advaita Vedanta perspective, and this is completely different from what we have been taught or told in the West. So, from a non-duality perspective, and a duality perspective, we have to look at God either from a personal or an impersonal perspective. And so, from an Abrahamic perspective, we tend to believe that, again, I am not here because I know how sensitive individuals are when it comes down to their belief. People will, don't, I'm just here to educate. So don't think that I'm, again, like that's why I started off in the beginning of this video stating that I am an existentialist. I am not, I am therefore, with that being said, I am not a theist. However, I am not an atheist as well. So, however, I'm here to educate. So I don't want anybody to say, oh, I'm picking on their belief. Oh, I'm picking on their God. No, that is not what I'm here to do. I am here to educate. And again, coming from an existentialist perspective, I'm coming from a neutral perspective. That is why, again, all of my videos, none of my videos are promoting a particular belief system, a particular deity, or a particular God. I am simply trying to introduce you to yourself. I am trying to get you to know yourself. That is the root cause of all of these videos. I am not here again promoting any particular deity or any particular God. So with that being said, I am not picking on any particular deity. I'm just utilizing the information that I know to get my point across as best as possible. So again, from an Abrahamic perspective, Christianity, Islam, things of that sort that utilize the Bible per se. These individuals, again, see God from an all-knowing, all-powerful concept, all-powerful, all-loving concept, a personal God, if I may say. A personal God is a God that basically looks out for you, takes care of you, does all of these things for you, that helps you, that heals you, and all of these things. So that is a personal God. And the individuals in the West, most individuals in the West, almost all individuals in the West, if I may say, believe in a personal God. And the reason they believe in a personal God is because they believe in a personal self. And if you listen to all of my videos are coming from a non-dualist perspective, and coming from a perspective where there is no self. I am constantly trying to eliminate having the idea of the false self, the ego, the false you. I am constantly trying to eliminate or destroy that false self, if I may say, with information. However, again, individuals in the West tend to believe in a personal God because they believe in a personal self. They believe that they exist separate from God. That is the difference with that is a personal God and a impersonal God. There is no separation from you and God. And again, when I use the word God, I'm using this word loosely because most individuals do not tend to understand when I use the word God. They don't understand. I am not talking about, and that is why again I hate to use the word God, because I don't want individuals to believe that I'm talking about an Abrahamic God and I'm talking about this God or that God. I'm talking about Allah or whatever God, Shiva, whoever God. I am not talking about. That's why again I tend to shy away from utilizing the word God. If you listen to what most of my videos, I use the word consciousness, awareness, pure consciousness, pure awareness, pure being, isness, I-ness. These is what those concepts or those terms or what I would consider to be God per se. However, I'm not referring to the Abrahamic God, the God that parted the Red Sea, or things of that nature. So that is why I tend to shy away from the word God, because I know again most individuals, when they hear the word God, they tend to associate God with their particular belief. And again, I am not here promoting any particular belief. So again, I'm just crossing my I's and dotting my T's. Yeah, because sorry, crossing my T's and dotting my I's, because again, I just know sensitive some individuals are when you speak about this thing called God. So with that being said, again, a personal God is someone would be more so someone who believes that they are a person. They believe that they exist separate from God, and that is something the West is accustomed to. However, the Eastern philosophy or principles or spiritual teachings would differ. They tend to take more of a non-duality perspective, meaning that there is no separation from God. Again, I hate to use the word God because people in the West would get confused and say, "What? What are you trying to say? You are trying to say you are not separate from God and all of that." That is why using the word God is such a tricky subject. I am utilizing the word God and I'm making a concession using saying the word God instead of saying consciousness. So from an Eastern perspective, they would say there is no separation between you and consciousness. You are one with consciousness, you are one with awareness, you are one with this, what they would call also Brahman or Atman, the soul. They would utilize words such as those, but they would not utilize words such as God. So that is what I'm saying to you. The word God is a very, very, very tricky subject. However, I just want us to understand the difference, what I'm talking about. So when I use the word God in this particular concept, I'm talking about the Abrahamic concept. But from my perspective, when I speak of God in terms of pure consciousness, pure awareness, more of a non-duality perspective is where I'm coming from, an existentialist perspective. Like I said, I am not a theist. I am not a theist, and I am not an atheist. However, I am an existentialist, but I am not an atheist. So, with that being said, back to what I was saying. So, again, a personal Eastern Western God would be caused because of having the belief of being a person, being I am this, you are that, I am here, God is there. That is the concept of the East. And the West. However, the East perspective is a totally different perspective. There is no separation from you and God. There is only God. And that is the angle where I am coming from. That is what I teach, a non-duality perspective. There is no separation between you and consciousness. There is
So let before I go too far, I just want to backtrack very briefly for those who may be watching and maybe didn't grasp what I was saying. What I was saying was that we have two different perspectives on the nature of God in reference to the East and the West. So in the West, we tend to see God as a personal God. My God, I am me, God is him, or God is she, or God is her, or God is it. We tend to see God as a personal God because we see ourselves as being personal beings. We see ourselves as being independent objects separate from God. Like I said, as again earlier, the root cause of all suffering is separation. The concept, the belief of suffering is rooted in separation. So, therefore, if you have a belief that you are here and God is there, therefore, you believe that there is a separation between you and God. And so, most individuals in the East, sorry, in the West, would say, I am praying to God for God to help me, heal me, help my finances, whatever it is that you are approaching God, whatever you're approaching God for. In the West, we tend to approach God from a duality perspective, looking at God as being separate from ourselves. However, in the East is a completely different perspective. They see many individuals view God from an impersonal perspective. Impersonal meaning that there is no separation between you and God at all. Again, that is why I'm saying when I'm talking to individuals in the West, most individuals do not understand non duality. Most individuals have never really heard about the concept, or even if they heard about it, they never understood it or they never took the time to go and look into it. Because most individuals, again, when it comes down to questioning somebody's belief, most individuals would never look into anything other than what they believe. That is why they call it a belief. And beliefs are some of the most hardest, difficult things to break free from, because once you believe something to be true, literally it will take heaven and earth to move that individual from believing in that particular thing. So again, in the West, we see God as a personal God, someone separate from themselves, doing for them, helping them, healing them, looking out for them. That's a personal God. And in the East, more so sees God from an impersonal God, meaning that there literally is no separation from God, because when you look into it in a much deeper perspective, and you go into self evaluation, self introspection, through meditation, things of the sort, you will come to conclusions and you will realize that there is no separation at all from you and God, because technically there really is no you. So there is only God that exists. And so this concept is a very difficult concept for the average individual in the East to, sorry, individuals in the West to wrap their minds around. That is why, again, I'm trying to give you guys a totally different perspective on the concept of why God allows suffering. So, in order to understand what I'm saying is why God allows suffering, you have to ask yourself, do you see God from a personal perspective? I am me, God is God, and you are separate from God. And if or do you see God from a non-dualist perspective? I am a part of God, and there's no separation from me and God. Do you see God from a Western perspective? God is somewhere in the sky, somewhere out there, and you are here. God is some object somewhere, and then you are some separate object. Or do you see God from a more Eastern perspective as being more as consciousness, awareness, things of that sort, terms of that sort, and based on your concept or your perspective of God, that will determine your answer, why do you see, why does God allow suffering? I'm going to go into it a lot further as well, but I'm just giving you guys an understanding. How you view God is going to determine your answer. Why doesn't God stop suffering? Because if you see God as being separate from you, then that's one thing. And then if you see God as being a part of you, then your perspective will be different as well.
No separation between you and this awareness. And that's what I'm talking about. And from the West, that is a very difficult concept to a very difficult pill to swallow, if I may say, because we were taught that this God lives somewhere else and God is in the sky, He is there, I am here, and He does this and I do that, and He corrects and He punishes or He rewards, and so forth and so forth. That is not what I'm talking about here today. So to get a different perspective, like I said again, why would this God who is all loving allow certain things? Either God is not all loving or he is not all powerful, because why would he allow all of these things, or he's not all knowing? I'm just saying there's many situations whereas we would wonder why would this all loving God allow all of these unloving things to happen? Why would this all powerful God allow all of these things to happen if he has the power to stop all of these things? If why would an all-knowing God know that this particular atrocity would happen and kill thousands and millions of lives and so forth and so forth? Why would he allow it? But again, like I said, the Western philosophies, the priest, the pastor, they would say God is free will. He gives us the free will to do whatever. And because of Adam and Eve, the sin, so therefore, we paid the price. Again, that also is somewhat a controversy. Why would we all be allowed to pay a price because someone else did such an atrocity? Why would the whole mankind pay such a price because of two individuals eons, thousands and thousands of years ago? So again, that is why the things that I spoke of does not necessarily stand up per se when it comes down to understanding why. None of the answers tend to give us any type of closure. So again, like I'm saying, from a non-dualistic perspective, there is no separation from God. So from a dualist perspective, God is personal. God is personal. He is personal in your life. There's you and there's God. From an impersonal perspective, God is not separate from you. And again, for the thousandth time, when I use the word God, I am not referring to the Abrahamic God who separated the Red Sea and who did all of these things. I'm not talking about that God per se. That's why I'm not speaking about any particular God. I am talking about consciousness, awareness. When I use the word God, consciousness, when I use the word God, replace that God with consciousness, awareness. That is what I'm referring to as God, not a particular God per se, not Allah, not Yahweh, not Krishna, not Yesus, no particular God, not His Majesty. I am referring to consciousness. I'm talking from a neutral perspective. So again, from an Eastern perspective, there is no separation. So therefore, there's no separation from this God. There's no separation from this God. So therefore, this non-separation is a very difficult concept for individuals in the in the West to grasp. So when we look at this God, when we look at God from a non-dualistic perspective, we tend to see God as being like the TV screen. A TV screen does not have any particular belief. It doesn't care what video, what movies it plays. It doesn't care if the video it plays is a horror movie. It doesn't care if it's a sad movie. It doesn't care if it's a happy movie. It doesn't care if anything happens tragic on the screen. That is how we have to look at this the thing you call God from a non-dualistic perspective. God is like the sky. The sky, not the clouds. The sky itself, where the clouds are positioned, where the clouds float around, and the space that we are in, the space that the universe is in. That would be an example of God. And I can only give examples. However, I cannot per se give a solid, concrete definition of this non-describable thing. If I would say this no thing is not nothing, but it's not a thing. However, again, so a TV screen would be a good example of this non-duality perspective. Where I'm coming from, the TV would be considered God in a particular sense. It does not care what its videos it shows. It's a neutral thing. The sky The TV is not affected by anything that it plays, any type of scary movie or whatever. The TV screen does not get scared. The screen does not get sad when there's a bomb went off and thousands of people got killed. It doesn't get scared when the boogeyman shows up. This is what I'm talking about, an impersonal God, an impersonal God. And however, the only way that someone could accept an impersonal God is if they do not see themselves as a personal being.
So, very, very, very powerful information. However, just going over it briefly, like I said, the concept of an impersonal God is very difficult for most individuals in the East, sorry, most individuals in the West to swallow because we were always told to pray to God, believe in God. God is here in the sky, you are down on earth. We get on our knees and we pray to God somewhere out there, not so much as ever looking inside of ourselves to find this being. And that is what the individuals in the East would do. They would put focus and emphasis on finding this God internally, looking for this God internally, and trying to find some connection between you and this God from a deeper concept, a deeper from the isness, the I-ness, the consciousness, the awareness that you are. They're trying to connect that dot to the consciousness or the super consciousness, if you may say, trying to connect those dots and realizing that there is no separation between you and God. So this again very difficult concept to understand. That is why, like I said, I can only use examples because when we talk about God, we're talking about something that we technically cannot describe per se. We're talking about something that is indescribable. We're talking about something that is not a thing, but it's not no, it's not nothing, but it's no thing. You see, so it's a very difficult idea to wrap our minds around because we tend to objectify consciousness, we tend to objectify awareness and put labels on these things as being physical, tangible things. And so that is a problem. So again, only thing most philosophers, gurus, and spiritual teachers, such as myself, we tend to use analogies, allegories to try our very best to describe the undescribable. Like I said a few minutes ago, God would be more like considered as an example, like the TV screen that you may be watching on your phone, on your computer, on your laptop, whatever you may be looking at. God would be more considered like a screen, something neutral that allows things to be played on it. The TV screen does not have any feelings at all. If the movie plays on it is a horror, it doesn't. The screen does not get scared. If the movie is a comedy, the screen does not laugh. It does not find any joy. If the screen, if there's a, a mass atrocity going on, war, whatever is on a TV screen, the screen is not affected by it at all. So that would be more an example of an impersonal God, having things being appearing, but it's not being affected by it at all. So as I go on, you're going to get a much clearer understanding of what I'm saying because this is the type of God that I'm talking about, an impersonal God. Like this, for example, the clouds that may be around me would be sorry, the space or the sky that is around me would be another perfect example of an impersonal God because the clouds, they exist inside of this space. The buildings that you see surrounding me or around me, they all exist inside of this space. The buildings, the house, the water, everything that you see exists inside of this space. The planet Earth, the stars, the satellites that are in space, all of those things exist inside of an infinite space. So the space itself would be considered God from an esoteric perspective. And what we tend to do in the East, sorry, in the West, rather than looking at the space itself, the container that is holding all of the objects inside of it, the stars, the trees, the birds, the planets, and so forth, we tend to objectify God and say God is the tree, God is the cat, God is the dog, God is this, God is the sky, whatever the case may be, and we tend to overlook the space that holds all of these things. The container itself will be considered to be God, an impersonal God. So when the rain comes down and the rain there's a thunderstorm, lightning and thunder, the rain and the thunderstorm does not affect the space at all. And that is what we're talking about. Seeing God from an impersonal perspective, a completely different perspective than what you are being told or what you're being taught about seeing God as. So a God that is like the space or like the sky surrounding the everything else is not affected by what is going on inside of it. Just like the TV screen is not affected at all whatever is being played on the screen.
So just like what I said, the personal God, the individuals from an Abrahamic perspective, they see God as being over there and me being there. God is God and I am me. So therefore, they see themselves as being personal. So therefore, they will see God as being also a personal God as well. However, when you see yourself from an impersonal perspective and you look at yourself as I am not a solid concrete, I do not necessarily exist the way that I believe I exist, and you look at yourself from an illusory perspective, from a dream state perspective, and you see yourself more so as a dream character or a video game character, from that aspect, you do not see God as being a personal being. God is more impersonal because there is no God and there is no you. There is no separation from God because you and God are of the same thing. And again, this may sound like blasphemy to a Christian or someone from the West. That is why I am saying do not get confused, because I am utilizing the word God, that I'm speaking about the God who passed the Red Sea and the God who did this and did that for the Israelites. That's not the God I'm talking about. I am thus using the word God so we can understand the difference between the different deities from a personal perspective and an impersonal perspective, from a duality perspective, whereas you exist and God exists, versus a non-duality perspective, whereas there is only God and there is no you. That is a different perspective. So again, the Christians or the Western philosophies would say that the root cause of all suffering is because free will. God allowed us because he allowed us to do whatever. However, what I am saying is now that's going to be very shocking to many people. Yes, all of that sounds good, but from an Eastern perspective, I would say that because there is no separation between God and there's no separation between you, God does not know suffering. I know that sounds very, very different from what you've been told or what you've been taught, but from a non-duality perspective, God does not know suffering, because like I said, just like the TV screen does not know suffering. The TV screen does not feel sad when someone dies. The TV screen does not get sick when someone gets sick. The TV screen does not have any emotional effect. Whatever emotional video scene is played on the scene, the TV is always neutral. And from a non-duality perspective, God is always neutral. God does not have any feelings for you in that same sense that you may think, because there is no you. However, God may feel certain things because of your feelings, believe that you are sick and you are this and so forth. And because God is you, then God feels things indirectly, if I may say. He has indirect experiences through you. So the TV does not necessarily have any feelings or experiences itself, but it feels and it has experiences through the movies and the TV channels, whatever is played on the screen. Hopefully that is kind of making sense. So again, a very difficult concept to understand God as not being personal. It's very difficult for individuals who do not understand a non-duality perspective, because once you see yourself as you, and then you will always feel like, well, God knows everything about me. God this and God that. Yes, God knows everything about you because God is you. And that is one of the reasons why God knows everything about you. And He knows everything because God is everything. And that is a different concept from the Eastern belief to the Western belief. And where I'm coming from is more of a Eastern concept, whereas there is no you for God to 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 look after, or whatever the case may be, because it is only God. God appearing as you, God appearing as me, or having experiences as me, having experiences as you. This is what they would be considered to be the dream state. Just like, again, the TV screen does not have any feelings about what movie shows on the screen. Just like the game character too does not know it's in a game. The game character, from its perspective, it believes that it is a character doing whatever it is doing. It does not know that it is not a part of a video game. And so, with that being said, that is what I'm saying to you, because the game character is not aware that it's a part of a video game. So, and the program per se, the program, be it Windows, DOS, or whatever the case may be, Linux or whatever, it's the program is the only thing that exists. The program, the guys who created the game is the only thing exists, and they are just appearances on the screen, appearing to be fighting dragons or whatever, whatever else the game character is doing. But however, the game character is really doing nothing. Just like a dream character, when you go to bed and you have a dream, when your character gets sick in a dream, you do not get sick at all. So the same thing, you or the dream character, when you get sick, God does not get sick. When you worry, God does not worry. Just like the screen does not worry, God does not worry. Therefore, when something happens to you physically in the dream, you get shot in the dream, God is not shot. So therefore, you tend to not, you do not you do not have any effect on God per se directly. God only understands or feels whatever you feel indirectly. Whatever you feel goes on in your life. That is how God has the feeling of these things indirectly, but he or it or whatever it may be does not feel like you think. You feel, so therefore you think God feels as well. That is why they say that God made, according to scriptures, God made man in his image and his likeness. And if his image and his likeness is fairless and does not, and again, that too is coming from whatever perspective you're looking from. So, from an Abraham perspective, God is an angry God, God is a jealous God, God has fair anger, he has favorites per se, things of that sort. That is not the case from an Eastern perspective. That
So I'm going to stop right there because I kind of went along quite a bit, and I don't want to, go too far into it. But however, again, very, very difficult concept for my viewers in the West to grasp and understand, because it's a very difficult pill to swallow. Because most individuals in the West, again, we see God from a personal perspective, because we see ourselves as being personal beings. I am me, you are you, I am separate from you, you are separate from me. However, when we study non duality practices, Eastern spiritual practices, and we come across non duality, we'll understand that there is no I and there is no you. There is no me and there is no us. There is no they and there is no them. Very difficult concept to understand, very difficult concept to grasp. So that is why it's so difficult for individuals in the East, sorry, in the West, to see God as being a part of them, because we see each other as being separate beings, and that is one of the first things we must do. First and foremost, we must see ourselves as being non-duality subjects, objects. We have to see ourselves as being one, and until we see ourselves as being not separate from each other, then we will elevate, evolve to seeing God also as not being separate from ourselves. Just like I said, when the dream character gets sick in a dream, you do not get sick. When the dream character dies in the dream, you do not die. Whatever happens to the dream character has zero effect on you as well. So, from the Eastern perspective, you are like the dream character, and God is like the only thing that really exists. The dream character is not a real character, a real person. The only person that exists is you. When you're dreaming at night, the character that you dream up is not real. So the only one exists is you. So when we apply that understanding to a non-duality perspective, the only being that exists is God, and you are the dream character in the mind of God, according to the Eastern esoteric philosophies and teachings. So, therefore, the same way when the dream character gets injured in the dream, it does not affect you directly. The same thing applies to God as well. When something happens to you in this world that we consider to be real, the dream state, nothing happens to God at all. God is not affected at all by your suffering. God is not affected at all by your pain, because from the Eastern perspective, you are like a dream character. Once we could grasp our minds, wrap our minds around that idea, it will make a lot more sense to understand why God allows suffering. Because technically, like I said, if there's suffering on the screen, on the TV screen, technically the screen is not affected by what's going on the screen, so there is no real suffering. So when we apply that same information to our life as well, and God, technically, God is like the screen, and we are like characters being played on the screen. Whatever happens to our life does not affect God at all, because technically we don't really exist. The only thing really exists is the screen playing these movies, playing these scenes, acting as me, God acting as me and you. So when we technically are injured or whatever happens to us, technically God does not know, or he's not affected by it at all, because technically there is no you and me separate from God to suffer. So, in a sense, God does not even know what suffering is. God understands suffering through the dream characters. The dream characters that you are is the only way God actually has some kind of idea of what suffering is, but God itself, the TV screen, is not affected by anything. So therefore, once you come to this dawn duality understanding, this perspective, you'll realize that you too are not actually suffering at all. You too are not actually being sick or injured or whatever's happening to you negatively in this lifetime. None of it is technically happening to you as well, because you too, at the core, are also consciousness awareness. Unlike the TV screen, just like the sky, you too are a neutral entity, just like God. A part of God is God.
That is not the case from an Advaita Vedanta perspective. That is not the case from a non-duality perspective, because God does not have any favorites, because God is the only thing there is that exists. It is only God. There's no you, there's no me. So therefore, just like the dream character does not suffer, just like the game character does not really suffer, just like uh, the dream character does not suffer in the dream, and the game character does not suffer in the game. You too may be suffering, appearing to be suffering in the physical world. However, you are not suffering. God is not suffering at all. So therefore, with that being said, therefore, God does not know suffering at all, because there is only God. There is no existence of anything else for God to know. So, therefore, if God only knows itself, he cannot suffer, because it's only itself. And we suffer again because of separation. We feel separated from God, therefore, we suffer. But until we come to know ourselves, who we are and what we are, only then we can actually get rid of this suffering. But that, again, this is a totally different perspective than what most individuals in the East, sorry, in the West are used to. God does not know suffering. And I know that sounds kind of a little controversial, but again, like I said, think of the sky. When the sky has a thunderstorm, a rainstorm, or whatever happens in the sky, does the sky itself is the sky itself affected by what's going on? Is the sky affected by the rain? No. Is the sky affected by the lightning? No. That is what I'm trying to give you guys an example of what God is from a different perspective. There is the space itself is not affected. If something goes off, a bomb goes off, and there's nuclear weapon goes off, nuclear chemical goes off in the space in the around us, and whatever the case may be. Yes, the air might be affected. However, the space itself is untouched. The space, you cannot destroy the space. You could only affect the things in the space, but you cannot affect the space itself. So with that being said, hopefully this will give you guys a much better understanding. So when you think you are suffering and God knows that you're suffering, if you are coming from an Abrahamic perspective, a duality perspective, yes, God knows you are suffering. God knows everything that you're going through. Yes, God is looking out for you and things of that sort. But if you're coming from a non-dualist perspective, God does not know you are suffering because there is only God and God cannot suffer. From a non-dualist perspective, God is not a jealous God. God is not an angry God. God is not a favorite because there is only God. If there's only God, why would God be angry? What is there for God to be angry at? If God is only God, who is there for God to have favorites for, to have favorites with? He does not have any favorites because there is no you and there is no me separate from God. So with that being said, I hopefully this gave you guys a much better understanding coming from a dualist perspective or a non-duality perspective. There is no suffering in God's eyesight. God is not suffering. God cannot suffer. God does not feel pain. God does not have any remorse, anger, jealousy, anything of that sort from a non-dualist perspective. However, coming from a dualistic perspective, yes, these things are true. Yes, these things actually have some effect on a dualistic perspective, a dualistic God. But from a non-dualistic perspective, no, there is no separation, none whatsoever. So, so again, hopefully this help you guys.
Again, very powerful statements. I'm just going to recap just very briefly because I know because I did say a lot in a very short period of time. So, like I said, God would be considered like the space. Not I'm not talking about the clouds. I'm talking about the space, the container that holds the clouds. Like I said, if a bomb goes off, a nuclear weapon goes off, yes, the objects that's inside of the space, the humans, the plant life forms, the sea forms, the sea creatures, the water, the objects, the buildings surrounding what you see behind me, they all will be affected by the bomb. But God being like the space cannot be touched at all. And when we come to realize who we are and what we are at the core, we will realize that we are also a part of this space at the core. That is why, like I said, from a non dualist perspective, when we tend to see ourselves as being a personal being, a personal being, an object, I am me, you are you, it's very difficult for us to grasp God as being a part of us in an impersonal way. It's very hard of us, difficult for us to see God like being a TV screen, being neutral. It's very difficult for us to understand or even grasp some of these ideas when we have been taught from an Abrahamic perspective that again God is outside there and you are inside here and we are looking up to God and God is looking down at us. These concepts that I'm talking about takes individual years and years to grasp. I always didn't have this understanding. It took me some time to accumulate the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to come to this understanding as well. But I am just that type of person. I went and I looked and I seeked and I looked under every rock and I wanted answers and I that is my job. That is why I'm able to come and tell you guys what I found out. So again, but the average person is not gonna question their beliefs, especially about God. They're not gonna look into it at all. So again, when we see God from an impersonal perspective, from a non-objective perspective, like God is not a thing, but is not nothing. And when you look at God as being more like consciousness, awareness, something that technically cannot really be uh, injured or damaged, or it doesn't really have any feelings per se. Consciousness is just aware of your feelings. Consciousness is aware when you're sad, when you're happy, when you're mad, when you're angry. But consciousness itself is just the vehicle that your emotions use so you could know what you feel. I don't know if that made any sense, but consciousness itself is a neutral thing. Consciousness does not feel anger. You may feel anger because of your chemicals in your mind and different things. You may feel happy, but consciousness is like the screen again that is playing out all of these emotions. All of your emotions are being played on the screen of consciousness, on the screen of awareness, but they are neutral things. But we tend to get confused with our feelings, with our emotions, and with our thoughts, and with our ideas, and we think that these things are us. So again, when we look at God from a non-dualist perspective, it's very difficult for us to grasp. It's very difficult because it's really has to do with the ego, because the ego does is so strong in us. Most individuals cannot fathom the fact that they never would look into the possibility that, hey, maybe I don't exist the way I think I exist, but we tend to hold on to this false self, what the Buddhists, the Hindus call the non-self. We hold on to this false self so strongly. We just have to believe that we exist the way we think we exist, because if we believe that we don't exist, we will fall apart. Many of our psyches will pretty much break down because we believe that we are so important. Our importance is so vital to our existence. We cannot fathom a world whereas we could just be fictitious game characters or dream characters in the mind of God. So it's our egos, the false self, that is keeping us back from this awareness, this enlightening, and this what they also call awakening. So when we come to this type of self-realization, to understand that the self that we think is real is nothing more than a fictitious illusion in the mind of consciousness, awareness, and then we will understand that we ourselves technically do not suffer at all, because we are also, like I said, the dream characters. When the dream character gets injured in a dream, is the dream character injured? No. Is the dream character sick when the dream character gets sick in a dream? No. When the game character gets injured in the game, does it really feel any pain? No. That is how we have to see ourselves in order for this realization to come about, for us to have this understanding of God being an impersonal God. But until we believe, and once we always believe God to be God and we believe to be us, we will always have this problem.
To get a better, much better understanding of seeing God from a personal perspective, meaning that you exist and God exists, and also seeing God from an impersonal perspective, seeing God that you do not exist and only God exists. So hopefully, again, this clears up the answer. Uh, why does God allow suffering in the world? Again, from a non-dualist perspective, God does not allow suffering in the world because there is no suffering. There is nobody to suffer. Again, in the dream state, the dream character, when the dream character gets sick or when something happens to the dream character, there's nothing happens to you at all. In the game world, when the game character gets injured or whatever, nothing actually happens to the program, to the Windows, the DOS, or the program. The game just basically, you can reset the game and play the game starts all over again. But nothing actually affects the primary, the root consciousness, the root awareness. And so that is what I'm trying to say here. Again, a different perspective is not that God allows any suffering in the world. Suffering simply does not exist. The world does not exist. The universe does not exist. All of these things are just appearances, manifestations of God, appearing to be separate entities and objects, but there is only God. So how can you suffer if there is no you? How can there be pain if there is no you. So if you believe in a angry, jealous God that feels pain and suffer and so forth, it's most likely, again, if you are made in the image of that God, you will feel pain and suffering as well. However, if you take a non-dualistic perspective and your God or the entity that you believe in is consciousness awareness, that consciousness awareness does not feel pain, does not feel does not, I shouldn't say feel pain, but does not suffer. And if you are that thing as well, you do not suffer as well. So that is a different concept, a different perspective. When we look at God, we either see God from a personal perspective, or an impersonal perspective. And the angle that I'm coming from today is more so coming from an impersonal perspective. So hopefully this video cleared up a few things in reference to seeing God from a completely different perspective. Not saying that God is allowing any of these things are happening. It's just that God does not know any of these things are happening directly. Again, this concept may take some time to swallow or understand. That is why all of my videos are pointing back to one simple philosophy: know thyself. And if you want to know yourself, this would not sound too foreign or too sound like blasphemy, because the only reason this may sound like blasphemy is because you see yourself as being a separate entity apart from God, which is the root cause of all suffering: separation, feeling a separation from God and others. But if you do not see yourself as a separate entity and a separate entity from God, then this information would make sense, totally make sense, and it would not be blasphemous uh, from that perspective. So with that being said, that
So, very brief recap. Like I was saying again, this concept about God is a completely different concept that you have been told. So, like I said, from a non-dualistic perspective, the only thing exists is God. There is no you, there's no me, there's no world, there's no dog, there's no trees, there's no cat, there's no rat. There is only God manifesting itself, appearing as you and I. And from an Eastern perspective, the awakening process is to awaken to that realization that you are a part of this, or you are itself, if I may say, God appearing as a separate being. That is what the whole Hindus, the Buddhist concept, breaking free from the illusion, the dream state, the matrix. That is what this is all about. In the East, in the West, it is all about becoming saved, going to heaven, or avoiding hell. That is what we tend to follow in the West. That is what we call salvation. In the East, they focus on what they call liberation, breaking free from the illusion of the false self, the non self, breaking free from the illusion of this false reality that they call samsara, maya, the dream state, matrix, and the list goes on and on and on. So until we come to that realization, again, very difficult concept to grasp, because most of us don't want to accept that because of our egos. We cannot just fathom the fact that we may just be mere uh, fictitious imaginations in the mind of consciousness, in the mind of God. Very difficult idea to believe, very difficult idea to accept. Many of us cannot grasp the fact that God, technically, from a non dualist perspective, God does not love you the way you think God loves you. From a dualistic perspective, you think God loves you as you. From a non dualist perspective, God does not love you the same way, because there is no you and God that is separate. There is only God loving itself, because God is love. And you are also a part of this non separate God. You are also love, made of the same. There is no difference between you and this entity we call God. from an Advaita Vedanta non-dualist perspective. Again, very difficult concept to grasp if you're coming from the West following Abrahamic faiths. Very difficult concept to swallow again, but that is why God does not allow suffering. God is not allowing suffering to happen. God simply does not know suffering is happening because there technically, from a non-dualist perspective, there is no one to suffer. The only thing that exists is God. You don't exist, so you're not suffering. So that is part of breaking free from the illusion, the matrix. The only thing that is the suffering is your false identity, believing yourself to be real, believing yourself to be true, believing the ego, and so therefore you suffer. And therefore, again, the root cause of suffering is separation. And because you feel there is a separation between you and God, you suffer. But again, from a non dualist perspective, there is no suffering in the world. I know it sounds kind of harsh and cruel, all of the atrocities that we see going on in the world. Technically, from a non-dualist perspective, there is no suffering at all because there is only God, and God cannot suffer. Just like the TV screen is affected when a bomb goes off and 1,000 people are injured in a tragedy on the screen, the TV has no effect. The same thing would apply to God as well. God is not affected at all by anything that happens in the world because the world itself is a fictitious, imaginary, illusory, made up thing by the mind of God itself.
That is the reason why God does not know there's any suffering, because from a non duality perspective, suffering does not exist. And I am not saying, and by no means I want anyone to misconstrue what I'm saying to you, because I know there's and many individuals who may be sick, individuals may be in a hospital suffering, and some people are dying and different things of that sort. By no means I am saying that these suffering is not real, because the illusion is real. The pain is real. However, from a deeper core fundamental principle perspective, nothing exists. So with that being said, I'm going to end this video. Hopefully.
And so, again, like I said, I just want to go over that too as well. Like I said, I am not saying that individuals do not suffer in this world. I'm not saying that pain does not exist. I'm not saying any of that. I am not delusional. These things are real. The illusion itself is real. Maya, the illusion, the dream state, the matrix is a literal real thing. However, like I said, when we go down to the core of existence, the fundamental principle, nothing is real. So, therefore, if nothing is real, there technically is no pain, suffering, death, and all of the atrocities that we're experiencing are not existing at all. However, they do exist from a illusory perspective. The illusion, the matrix, the Maya is real. If you stand in the front of a bus, you get hit, you will be injured and you could lose your life. So there are consequences. I'm not saying jump off a building and say you will fly, and no, that's not what I'm saying. Just like the movie The Matrix, when Lawrence Fishburne told Neo, if you get injured inside of the Matrix, you will actually be injured in the real world as inside outside of the Matrix as well. So the same thing applies. If you do jump off a cliff, you could lose your life, despite the fact that your life may be an illusory life. You still will lose it as well. So don't misconstrue or take anything that I'm saying to be, some type of cult teachings or something of the sort. All I'm simply saying is the goal is to come to self-realization and wake up in the illusion so that we could go through this matrix, this Maya, with a lot more clarity. And so therefore, when we do wake up from this illusion, the reality will actually shift. Things that work out in your favor more. You could have more control over reality, and life would not so much as be happening to you, but life will end up happening more so for you rather than against you, if I may say.
you guys have got some information that was valuable to you guys. Again, please go ahead, check out my other videos, like, share, and subscribe. And I really, really appreciate you guys for watching and hanging on this long. Once again, Triple P, and I'm out.
Oh. Once again, another very, very powerful, informative video. And like I said, this channel is not for, entertainment purposes. I'm not, these are not cat videos and, comedy type of thing. This channel is for individuals who are really serious about learning, individuals who may be wanting to transform their lives and want to pretty much expand their mind and grow, maybe break some of the old habitual bad habits, bad behaviors, wrong identity issues, and all type of different life transformation subject matters. So again, that is what this channel is all about. And today's video again was another very, very, very powerful video, why we suffer. And I cannot stress the importance enough. Again, I thank you guys so much, so much for sticking around and watching. I know your time is very important, and that is why again your attention to me is priceless. So as usual, please continue to like, share, subscribe, and follow and all that good stuff. So when we do create new videos, new live streams every Wednesdays, and Wednesdays, and Fridays, you guys will be notified, so you guys could join the chat. And you see a number, there's a number scrolling across the screen. Please feel free to call in, toll free, if you guys are, you download the WhatsApp app, and you guys could call from anywhere in the world free of charge, and you could ask questions as well. So again, like I said, I thank you guys so much for watching, and as usual, if you all, please discontinue, please stop. I cannot stress this enough. Please stop believing in illusions, delusions, and hallucinations. Triple P, and I'm out.